There are people in this world who almost never get taken advantage of. They rarely make the mistake of trusting the wrong person. They seem to sense dishonesty before it surfaces, avoid situations that trap others, and read rooms in ways that feel almost instinctive. Most people assume these individuals were simply born with a gift. But that's not the full story. What they actually possess is something far more learnable. A trained eye for human behavior, a habit of watching rather than just listening, and a quiet discipline that keeps their judgment clear even when emotions are loud. The greatest advantage any person can develop has nothing to do with physical strength or raw intelligence. It has everything to do with the ability to see what others constantly miss. And the moment that skill becomes second nature, every relationship, every negotiation, every interaction you have will never look quite the same again. Here is the first truth that separates the aware from the easily deceived. Words cost nothing. Anyone can say the right thing at the right moment. Anyone can perform warmth, loyalty, care, and sincerity for as long as it serves them. But behavior, consistent, unguarded, repeated behavior, is where reality actually lives. A person may tell you they value you while quietly treating your time as irrelevant. Someone may speak endlessly about honesty while bending the truth whenever it becomes inconvenient. Another may shower you with praise in public while undermining you in private. The gap between what people say and what people do is where most life lessons get learned the hard way. The wisest response is simple. Listen, yes, but watch even more carefully. Study how someone treats people who can offer them nothing. Pay attention to how they behave when no audience is present. Real character does not show up in prepared speeches. It leaks through in the smallest, most ordinary moments. Behind most human action, there is a reason. And that reason is not always the one being presented. People are complicated, layered, and deeply motivated by personal interest, even when they don't fully realize it themselves. Someone who suddenly becomes unusually generous may need something from you. Advice that sounds helpful on the surface may quietly serve the advisor more than it serves you. A person who constantly positions themselves as the victim may be using guilt as a tool for control. None of this requires turning every relationship into a criminal investigation. The goal is not suspicion. The goal is a calm, grounded habit of asking a single question. What does this person gain from this? When you ask that question consistently and observe the answers through behavior rather than words, the picture becomes remarkably clear. Emotions are perhaps the most reliable enemy of accurate perception. When a person is deeply attached, whether through love, loyalty, fear, or desperation, they stop seeing clearly. They begin interpreting reality according to what they hope is true rather than what the evidence actually shows. A person ignores repeated disrespect because ending things feels too painful. A friend keeps extending trust to someone who lies because the shared history feels too heavy to abandon. Emotions create blind spots, and blind spots are not neutral. They are exactly where manipulation takes root. The person who knows what triggers your anger can provoke you at will. The person who understands your need for validation can influence your choices without you ever noticing the pull. Developing emotional control is not about becoming cold or robotic. It is about creating the space between stimulus and response, that quiet pause where honest observation lives. Calm people are simply harder to deceive. Problems almost never arrive fully formed. They grow. A small boundary crossed becomes a permanent pattern. A casual lie becomes a comfortable habit. A minor manipulation, left unchallenged, becomes the blueprint for something far more damaging. The people who end up in the most painful situations are rarely naive. More often, they noticed the early signs and dismissed them. They told themselves it was nothing. They gave the benefit of the doubt one too many times. Paying attention to small warning signals is not paranoia. It is respect for your own instincts. When something feels off, the feeling is rarely accidental. Your mind often registers danger before your emotions are willing to accept it. The wiser path is to trust that quiet internal observation, to treat early discomfort as information rather than overreaction. Most people enter conversations trying to be seen. They push to be heard, to impress, to explain themselves, to be validated. And in doing so, they miss nearly everything happening around them. The person who learns to be genuinely quiet in conversation, not passive, but deliberately observant, gains access to an extraordinary amount of honest information. People reveal themselves constantly when they feel comfortable speaking freely. Insecurity hides inside excessive boasting. Bitterness leaks through sarcasm. Dishonesty appears when a story changes slightly every time it's told. True priorities surface in what a person chooses to complain about. None of these signals are visible to someone too busy performing their own role. Listening, real, patient, unhurried listening, is one of the rarest and most powerful social skills a person can develop. And the person who listens most carefully almost always understands the room far better than anyone speaking the loudest. Comfort is a mask. Nearly anyone can appear patient, kind, generous, and disciplined when life is running smoothly. The true shape of a person's character becomes measurable only when pressure enters the equation. Watch how someone responds when a plan falls apart. Notice how they treat people around them when they are frustrated, afraid, or losing control of a situation. Do they become cruel? Do they abandon responsibility and point blame in every direction? Or do they remain composed and protect the people who depend on them? Stress removes the performance. What remains underneath tells you more about someone's genuine nature than months of ordinary interaction ever could. Envy is perhaps the most carefully concealed emotion in human relationships. Almost no one admits to feeling it, and yet it shapes behavior in ways that are unmistakable once you know what to look for. A person experiencing envy rarely attacks directly. Instead, the feeling surfaces as faint mockery dressed as humor, as a strange inability to celebrate your achievements with any real warmth, as subtle discouragement whenever you share a new goal. The uncomfortable truth is that this particular dynamic does not always come from people who dislike you. Sometimes it comes from close friends, from people who once genuinely cared, who find that your growth creates an uncomfortable mirror. The smartest response is not defensiveness or arrogance. It is quiet awareness. Notice who becomes distant after your progress. Notice who redirects conversations away from your wins. Notice who subtly plants doubt in your decisions. Envy always leaves small, readable traces. The need to be liked by everyone is one of the most effective tools anyone can use to control another person. When approval becomes essential to your sense of self, your judgment quietly hands itself over to whoever is willing to either grant or withhold that acceptance. You begin saying things you don't believe, tolerating treatment you should reject, and staying in situations that are clearly damaging, all to avoid the discomfort of being misunderstood or disliked. The liberating and difficult truth is this: you cannot earn universal approval. No level of kindness, accommodation, or effort will make you acceptable to every person you encounter. And the sooner that reality is accepted honestly, the sharper your judgment becomes. Because the moment you release the need for everyone's validation, you begin seeing people and situations with far less distortion. Manipulation loses its grip. Unhealthy dynamics become easier to name. Your decisions start reflecting your values rather than your fear. What a person truly values is not found in what they say during meaningful conversations. It is found in where they consistently direct their time, energy, and attention across ordinary days. A person who claims family is central to their life, but is perpetually unavailable, has already communicated their priority. Someone who speaks passionately about integrity but quietly bends their standards whenever honesty becomes costly has revealed something important. Repeated behavior, studied with patience, is the most honest biography any human being produces. It requires no interpretation, only consistent observation. This applies equally to yourself. Your daily choices, not your stated intentions, are the truest measurement of what you actually value. Self-awareness begins the moment you stop accepting your own comfortable explanations and start watching your own patterns with the same honesty you bring to reading others. The deepest and most encompassing habit of all is simply learning to observe, to move through the world with your attention genuinely engaged rather than skimming the surface of every moment. Most people look without truly seeing. They move through interactions too quickly, distracted, half-present. But when you begin to slow down internally, even as life continues at its usual pace, an entirely different layer of reality becomes visible. The way someone's voice shifts when a particular topic comes up, the pattern of when a person pulls away versus leans in, the small contradictions that repeat across weeks and months. These signals are always present. Most people simply never quiet themselves enough to notice them. Awareness is not a personality trait reserved for the naturally perceptive. It is a practice built slowly through the decision to pay attention to relationships, to environments, to yourself. And when that practice becomes consistent, the quality of your understanding improves in ways that are difficult to fully explain until you experience it. The combination of all these habits produces something quietly remarkable. Not cynicism, not paranoia, but a kind of grounded clarity that makes life genuinely easier to navigate. You stop being surprised by betrayal you saw forming. You stop giving energy to connections that observation told you were hollow. You stop reacting impulsively in moments that call for stillness. And perhaps most importantly, you stop lying to yourself about the things you already know to be true but found too uncomfortable to accept. Seeing clearly is not always pleasant, but it is always better than the alternative. Moving through life half asleep, filling in the gaps with hope, and learning your lessons only after the damage is already done.